Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to spend your lovely evening with us. My name is Kenneth. As introduced, I'm an assistant professor of psychology here at SMU. I actually teach a class on close relationships. So too bad for all of you who never took my class here at SMU. But today I'm really honored to be moderating this panel. It's really talking about or speaking about a topic that's really close to my heart. Thinking about love and relationships. But I think what we've seen is that love is no longer just as personal as we thought it used to be. Now it's a full ecosystem from algorithms that shape who we are, from weddings that teach us how we should commit. It really mediates the most intimate and important decisions of our life. This is something that my advisor told me, my parents told me, like who you choose to marry is going to be the most important decision of your life. So tonight, I think we're really privileged to have our panelists here to talk a little bit about how demographics, technology, and culture are reshaping how Singaporeans find partners, marry, and build families, and what that means for business policy, and I think society and Singapore as a whole. I think to start off, I just wanted to get a big sense a sense of the big picture, and I think all the panelists could weigh in on this. So when we talk about the love industry, how large is this market globally in Singapore? What exactly does it encompass? Maybe Alex can take the question.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Alex. So I run Paktor and I run another dating group called Lunch, actually. So I think back to this question, how big is this market? I think this market expanded a lot over the last 10, 15 years. I think right now, as we see, I think just to tranche it up first, there are different areas that I see this. Love industry is made up of the finding part, which is the matchmaking part. There's also the enhancing part, the coaching part. There's also the commitment part, which is the marriage part. And there's also the other part, which is the maintenance part, right? You go out for dining, you go out, you buy jewelry, so on and so forth. There are a lot of different spends. So I'm particularly focused on the finding part, the search part. That's the matchmaking business. I think purely on matchmaking business globally right now is about 20 billion US, thereabouts. Split maybe 75% online dating, and the other 25% will be offline dating. Yeah. So in Singapore-wise, we are talking about maybe about 25 million for online dating kind of market size. For offline, we'll probably look at 10, 15 million. I think just to be clear, offline dating means personalized matchmaking. People pay a company to go and find dates. And online datings are your swipes, your dating apps.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanna. So I run Rose and Revel. We are actually a wedding planning company. We also have a sister brand called Lily & Co, which specializes in flowers and decor. And I've been in the wedding industry for coming to 8 years now. So I've been seeing a lot of couples, have been observing all their behavior as well. In terms of the market size, my numbers are not as big as Alex's. In 2024, there's about 26,000 marriages registered. But that's actually not a lot, considering that a year before it was actually 7% higher. So, weddings are becoming lesser and lesser. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuvan. So the capacity that I'm in is in my volunteering capacity. So I'm currently with the Families for Life Council. I started Families for Life. When I started my term with Families for Life Council, I was actually single. 2 years in, I'm married with a kid. So sometimes I joke about saying that the best way to get people attached is get them to join the council, but obviously we can't do that. Just a bit of brief about Families for Life Council. Essentially, we are a for people by government outfit. So we are funded by MSF and we organize programmatic engagements for families, especially during the June holidays, but now through the whole part of the year. We also advocate with the industry on family-friendly practices. Prior to the Families for Life Councils, I was actually in the SDN Council, Social Development Network, which has since been sunset. So for those of you who understand the context, SDN was the government arm of, in the sense, dating. We used to organize activities for couples or potential couples to meet. There was also the Love Boat, where they used to fund part of it as well. But over time, we realized the private sector is a lot more well-positioned to actually take up these engagements. And we realized from the citizenry that they did not want to come when you put government's logo on it. And so when you talk about market size, maybe my perspective would be where I'm seeing growing trends of interest by young people. It's actually more on the skills area. You'll be surprised that now young people are saying that we're not sure how to make conversations as a start. And as a result, at the national level, we are seeing a decline in young people having friends or close friends. If you just noticed the IPS survey, I think a couple of days ago, 10% do not have a close friends. If you were to look at National Youth Study, the number of people who say that they have a close friend has decreased by about 100%, by twice the amount. So we are starting to see that before we even enter the relationship piece, even if we were to look at the friendship piece or the friend formation pieces, we are starting to see some challenges in the area. And I'll be happy to elaborate on those perspectives later on in the engagement.
Right. And I think some of the sort of statistics that Yuvan mentioned really echo some of the data that I've actually collected in my own studies. What we see is for college students, SMU students, you'll be surprised, like 40% are single, and 40% of the 40%, I can't do the math right now, they've never been in a relationship before in college. So it's something that I think we need to pay attention to. But in that sense of that demographic change and demographic trend in Singapore, in college right now, how do you think these sort of demographic shifts, social, cultural, economic shifts reshape how people meet, how they form relationships and make long-term commitments today? Again, addressed to the panel.
I'll take that first. I think the good news is young people actually want to get married and want to have kids. In the MPTD surveys, time and time again, I think about 8 out of 10 still say they want to get married. 7 out of 10 still say they want to have kids. So that's the good part. Where we see the gap is in what's happening on reality or on the ground. We are starting to see a rise in singlehood, especially I think from the 25 to 35 age bracket. And there are some trends that we are observing. One is a changing prioritization of life. In the past, getting married was an obligation, a rite of passage, a stage in your life. Now it's almost seen like a choice of the kind of lifestyle you want to have. If I get married, this is the lifestyle I'm going to have. If I don't get married, this is the lifestyle I'm going to have, and I prefer not getting married. And another perspective that we're seeing is the rise of DINGs, dual income, no kids. In the past, it's almost automatically assumed that once you're married, you will have a child. I think my wife and I, we tend to go to Jurong Lake Gardens. We will say it's a 50-50, that a pram is either has a puppy or a kid, right? And you see that evolving over time. And another area that we see is that prioritization. There is interest for young people to get married, but it's not a high priority item. I would rather do my career, explore the world, and then get married, which is why you see in terms of trends, the median age of those getting married starting to rise up. So if we were to see all of these varying trends, it's just not surprising that marriage, while intellectually and emotionally still is an important part, but the way it's practiced, sometimes we feel that other priorities are taking shape. And I think that goes to show more about Singapore's culture and Singapore's society, more than whether the concept of marriage is still relevant or not.
Well, I think one of the key reasons, I mean, we are also chasing marriages. I think for a dating company, a good outcome would then be seeing increase in marriage. But then it's also not very easily measurable. I mean, for a dating company, our easiest way to track is whether they go on their second date. Yeah, we can get an immediate echo whether they are okay, keen on the partner that we introduce. Are they okay to go on a second date? And that's our measurement at this point in time, our measurement of success. But then for marriage, what we see as a challenge is that a lot of them, like what you even say, they don't really see the need to have kids. Or maybe one of the key reasons we also do see is that it's too expensive to have kids. And therefore, I cannot afford to have kids. I don't want to bring a kid out that I cannot afford or couldn't give him or her the best of life, and therefore don't want kids. And if don't want kids, then why get married? So that's a backward echo, right? So I think that's also something that we face even at the front line when singles comes to us and say, I'm trying to look for a life partner. The end goal now that we cast to them doesn't have to be, you are here to get married. That may not be the way. But we are here to solve a bigger problem, which is companionship, loneliness, which is still a very real thing to as they continue to age. So I think even in our pitch, even in our introduction of our service, I think that end goal has also shifted.
So for me, the couples that I've been working with, like you mentioned earlier, they are marrying later. So median age is a lot higher. My couples are mostly in the late 20s, early 30s. So in terms of spending power, they are willing to spend on their wedding, but the wedding size matters a lot to them. So they are a little bit more intentional about inviting the guests that they want. They want to curate their guest list. They don't want like 30 tables, On average right now, the weddings that we're seeing on the ground are between 80 to 150, which is also a difficult spot for hotels because it's very hard for them to sell their ballrooms. Yeah, so that's what we observe on the ground.
I just want to add on Alex's perspective. So the good thing is that if people go to his agencies, right, actually that's a good sign. What we see on the ground and data is that the perspective of dating or marriage is that if it happens, it happens. Which is a very strange concept compared to many Singaporeans and how they do things. There's a structure, there's an intent. If I don't get my degree, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. But when it comes to marriage, somehow or other, let the forces at BE handle it. I will eventually get married until they realize they're 40 and then, oh no, what has happened, right? So that is another mindset that we have observed, which is quite surprising when we do our surveys.
And I think on sort of like that note, when we're thinking a little bit about how people are being strategic about how they're meeting and how they want to meet their partners, I think we want to spend a little time talking a little bit about the dating industry. And I have some questions for Alex from the audience, some from what we've curated. But can you very quickly, I think, introduce Paktor, Gaigai, your businesses, how the approach to matchmaking sort of has differed from the early days of dating apps?
Yeah, so that's how I started this whole journey into this industry. Started off with Paktor app in 2013. So it's a dating app that the Asian version of Tinder. That's how it started. The founder came back from the US and thought that, I think Asia also needs such an app. But after a year, they realized that, hey, there's a lot of users, but and a lot of them right swipe, trying to find a match, and they're willing to pay. Can we monetize that into a separate business model, which is the offline dating biz? Yeah, so we set up another brand called Gaigai. That's where I came in as well, to start off this whole offline business model. So offline basically means clients says that, hey, it's like a headhunting company, outsourcing company lah. So recruitment company. Say, let you help me find my partner. This is who I am. This is what I want. Please go and do the job. This is the amount of money. Please take. So they'll buy like 5 dates, things like that, with us, and then we'll go out and go and hunt, go and find through our database or through our network. We also have an image kind of business. So there are clients who come and say that I don't need dates. I have plenty of dates, but I cannot get past first dates. Every time first date fail. So they are very they want to find a life partner that can sustain, right? So they come to coaching so that they can look better, talk better, not so awkward during the first date. That's our flick kind of business. Then I think in 2024, we did a merger. So we merged with Lunch actually. So Lunch actually has been around for about 22 years already. Started in 2004. So they are predominantly an offline dating business. So through this merger, now we are in 6 different markets across the different countries. Paktor has 3 countries. They have 6. So we have some overlapping. In terms of focus, Lunch actually targets a slightly older audience. So usually the the benchmark is about 40. So 40 above will be targeted by Lunch actually. 40 below is through our offline dating brands. Gaigai is the name for SG. In all the different markets, we call it slightly differently. So Gaigai, you don't see Gaigai Hong Kong, Gaigai Taiwan. We have different names, sorry, A double for Hong Kong, Paktor Premium for Taiwan. Yeah, so I think that's generally where we are and what we are doing. I think you also asked something about how is it different from early dating apps. Early dating apps basically is a swipe-based mechanism, right? Oh, actually, a very good question. How many of you have used a dating app before? Oh, okay, not too bad. Okay, so about 60%, 70%. How many people have gone to an offline dating company before? Oh, no bad. Yeah, so I think roughly you guys have some sense about the differences. Dating apps at the start is just right swipe, 2% right swipe, they'll get a match. They start chatting, they do this self-serve, like job portal, you also put in your resume, you try to search for yourself. We are the hunters again. Yeah, so over the last 15 years, I think there's been a lot of different changes in terms of features. From a swipe base, we have gone to voice dating, we have gone to video dating. You can basically swipe into a live chat between anybody around based on your filter. You've been talking to someone, another single, live. Probably you have a limited time, maybe like 20 seconds or 10 seconds, and before you decide whether to continue or not. So you have different features on the online part. For offline part, we have also evolved into different product services also. We have catered for VIPs. We have a business unit called 11. We only take care of 11 clients at any point in time. So it's for the high income. We also have LGBT business. That's for our Taiwan-based business as well. Yeah, I think roughly that will be introductive.
Very cool. And I think one thing that's sort of resonated with what you said was how it seems to be very much work-based, almost like an interview, so on and so forth. And so I think, and this is also something like students have very astutely asked me as well. How are you balancing, I think, business initiatives with the well-being of the consumers who are using the app?
Yep. Now, ideally, a dating app should be free. Everybody come in and use, and then you have millions and millions of users all swiping. And then you guys want to filter whatever you want to filter, all there, ideally. But running a dating app is very expensive. The cost of acquisition nowadays is super high. Your meta friends are earning a lot of money through us, I mean, from dating companies as well. Yeah, so CAC is high. And then also in terms of like sustaining all these conversation, storage is very expensive also. So for one thing that we always need to do, VCs always want us to do is to monetize. So for app or monetization, if you are clear, basically there's a premium model lah. You want more filter, you need to pay money. You want more swipes, you need to pay money. So we have some paywall somewhere in between. For offline, basically at the front, they will charge you money already. Yeah, unlike job again, where we know that the person has successfully enrolled into the company, our dear friends will never say that we are attached and then we cannot charge on success. Yeah, so we are always have to upfront the payment, and sometimes we charge success fee also, but at least for Singapore, we don't do that. Other countries, they do. Yeah, so success fee meaning you find a life partner, you get you get married, you need to pay another fee lah. Yes. You also need to honestly tell them that we are getting married. Yeah, please collect my money. Yeah, so monetization is something that is very important. And for dating app, churn comes very fast. Within first day, you can lose like 70-80% of your database already, also of your downloads the day before already. So churn is very fast. You need to monetize fast enough. So that is one consideration. When do you put that paywall so that you have sufficient users, quality users, continue using the app so that you have a good active user base? Another thing about well-being would then be safety. There's a lot of scams. There's a lot of catfishing, right, on your dating apps. As a platform provider, it's also costs to verify. Yeah, it's not free to verify. So just to share as well, I mean, for example, if you want to go through a KYC for someone onboarding, you probably might have to pay maybe $3 to $5, right, per user to get to be fully verified. Banks might even pay more for each KYC, right? So on a very basic, right, you can do OTPs, you can do those screens. What I'm trying to say is that, again, you need to balance cost to how much you want to filter, right? And therefore, I think it's a constant balance of risk and also a constant balance of user safety, monetization, company interest. Yeah. So I think all this.
Wow, I think that's like I think that's super interesting, and I think with sort of the way we've been talking about how there have been demographic shifts and demographic shifts in the people who are using the dating apps, have you noticed or how have you or how has the company sort of updated their features, algorithms, or the use of AI? How has the use of AI, I think, shaped the use of the dating apps? Your experience.
Yeah. I think as it shifts for maybe just focusing on to the AI piece, I think Tinder has been trying to use AI for the longest, and Tinder is number one player lah. Anyway, for dating apps, number one player, doing about 2 billion annual top line. Yeah, so I think they are is the buzzword anyway. Without the AI term, your valuation drops and also. So we also have to continually inbuild AI into our processes. So for at least for our businesses, AI has been used to improve workflows for us at this point in time. Yeah. So for example, our offline business, right? AI now can help us do the coordination of dates. So for example, if two parties on our platform has been selected and they agree to go on a date, their coordination can be done through an AI kind of bot. We are now, next project is to try to get it to become that matchmaker. Again, I think it's just algo running, right? To based on parameters, they try to find a suitable match. I think that is also something that we are slowly working on. Of course, it saves costs, but there's also a lot of cost upfront to develop such a model and such process. Yeah, so I think we have been doing those. In terms of that can also be, I think for app, we haven't been fully testing it yet because the user base is a lot bigger. Yeah, but the idea is the same. How can we, through AI, find better matches for our user base?
Very cool. I think from a very, nerdy perspective, I'll be like super interested to see like do AI matchmakers do better than human matchmakers? No, hopefully human matchmakers do better than AI matchmakers or just as well. But I think moving on from how we meet our partners, I think it's also like extremely important to find out or talk a little bit about after we've met and we've made a decision to commit to one another, like what that process looks like. And I think I'll address some of these questions to Joanna. And I think one thing that's extremely important to me or a lot of people out there, where a lot of people, I think the research also shows that by and large, many people are meeting through apps right now. So do you know if first of all, like, do you know if your couples met organically compared to apps? And have there been any differences to how they've thought about weddings, the proposal, so on and so forth?
Okay, so firstly, I've been asking a lot of my couples these days, how do you guys meet? And a lot of them are telling me that they met through a dating app. And we have seen that increase. I would say really right now it's about maybe 60 to 70% of our couples all met through dating app. And when it comes to planning their wedding, you can see that maybe the app couples are a little bit more analytic. They treat planning a wedding more like planning a project. They're very smart about it. They're like, okay, we kind of know what we want. So we just want to make decisions fast. And as a planner, we really seek that advice from you, so we don't have to look at so many options. Just tell us what's the best value. Yeah. And usually these couples, they're a bit more intentional when it comes to planning their wedding, curating their guest list. And sometimes they're a little bit protective of how they met. I was just telling them that I have a couple that told me that they met on a dating app, but not to mention that in front of their parents because they are very conservative. Yeah. So because they met through a dating app, then they become very intentional about telling their story through their wedding. So it's not just going through the motions. A lot of them are asking, why do we need to do a gate crash for Chinese ceremonies? People are doing away with all those traditional fetching your bride ceremonies, and couples are okay to just get ready in a hotel together and then just show up for the banquet, for the dinner banquet. Yeah. So these are what we observe from our couples. And in terms of planning their wedding, also couples are a bit more like selective. They would rather put their budget, into things that matter to them. So things like a wedding favor, those small door gifts that you get, they're doing away with that. We have couples that just forgo all those door gifts, invitation cards, and they rather put their money into like an after party experience in the hotel for their guests so that they could prolong that whole wedding experience. Because to a lot of my couples, they feel like, oh, like that one day passes so fast. There has been a trend of like deconstructed weddings where couples want to have weddings not just in one day, but actually over a prolonged period. Yeah. So it could be, through like destination weddings where you actually have a 3-day experience. You get the welcome, you get the wedding itself, and then you have a post-wedding party. Could be a yacht ride or high tea. Yeah. So there's been a trend across the world, especially. It's called deconstructed weddings. Yeah.
Well, it almost makes me sound like I should have had one of those weddings. I had a COVID wedding, so it was like 50 people and like no construct at all, in a sense. But I think what you're raising is that what seems to come through is that there are many, I think, different expectations that couples have now about their wedding. Can you say a little bit more about whether couples are more maybe value driven or experience driven or meaning driven, and more importantly, I think how does that affect the wedding business in a sense?
Okay, so for meaning driven, it will be, to me, it will be more like, why are we doing this? What's the need for gate crash, tea ceremony, right? So couples are questioning what's the point of all these different customs that their parents are making them go through, right? And then the second one was value or experience, right? Yeah. So experience, definitely a yes. I mean, we have seen that in terms of the wedding vendors that emerge. There are lesser weddings, now, but there's been a lot more interesting vendors that have surfaced. So a lot new businesses have surfaced where they provide a more like a wedding live station experience. We have those like caricature drawing. We have like live band, we have like a flower bar where couples would repurpose all the flowers that they have used at their weddings and give it away to all their guests. Yeah, so there's been very, very interesting. We have like art as well. So they would fly an artist in and they would just get every guest at the wedding to be part of that art. So you can paint a little bit on the canvas and then the artist will tie everything up together, right? So in terms of vendors, we're seeing a lot of increasing interesting mix. It's getting tougher for the wedding vendors on the ground because there's lesser weddings, but it does mean that they all have to differentiate themselves. Even the veterans in the industry, they got to keep up with the trends, what are the youngsters into right now? What are the Gen Zs looking for? There's also been a trend of a wedding content creator. So you could just hire a content creator to go around your whole wedding shooting on iPhone. Yeah, so that kind of pisses off the photographers a bit, but it's increasingly a trend for couples to hire that service so that they get immediately access to the wedding content. Yeah. So it's been quite interesting, seeing all these on the ground. I think couples are getting a little bit more intentional as well, curating the guest list. The smallest wedding I ever did was during COVID. It was like a 14 pax wedding across 3 hotels. They did their solemnization in Chimes. They went over to Raffles Hotel for high tea. And then they did a dinner at Fullerton Bay Hotel where they could see the Marina Bay Sands view. Yeah, so that's very interesting. I mean, contrary to that, I also have big weddings where it's a 680 pax banquet in Shangri-La. The couple met organically, so they were very privy about the guest list because, there's 2 families coming together and there was a lot of guests from their parents. They probably didn't even know half of that. It was mostly business associates, relatives, extended families. Yeah. So that's been very interesting. And you can see the way these 2 different segments of couples plan their weddings You know, the app couples are a lot more intentional, a bit more analytical. And whereas the organic couples are, I don't want to say this, but kind of just following the wishes of their parents. Yeah. So a lot of times they might be like, oh yeah, we're going to scratch this. And then 3 weeks before the wedding, they'll be like, okay, no, mother-in-law wants this to happen. So then we're like, okay, we'll go ahead with it. Yeah.
All right. I think on that note, and I think you've been like sharing like many stories of your couples. Any one story I think that maybe stands out or stood out to you as you were doing any of your events?
Quite a lot of stories. I mean, generally, my couples have all been very nice. We do see a lot of meltdowns. You know, weddings are very emotional. I had a bride that meltdown just before her second march in. She really wanted to watch like a game in the ballroom, but of course we were like behind in program, so we have to just continue on with the program, right? Yeah, and we did get approval from the husband, but she was very upset because she really wanted to watch that game. So there was a lot of like managing of expectations, emotions as well. Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we managed to calm her down. And then she went into the ballroom like everything's okay. And we also had to problem solve on the spot and just make sure that the game could happen on like a second phase of it in the second half of the dinner. Yeah, so we made that happen and then everything was smooth. But yeah, a lot of problem solving on the ground. Yeah, sometimes there could be like AV issues as well. You know, like maybe like the couple's friend played a wrong video that was supposed to come out. So that's something that we have to quickly like solve on the spot and reassure the couple that like, okay, don't worry, you guys just walk in first and then we'll play the video. We'll play the correct video later on. Yeah, and we find a way to liaise with the MC as well to just synchronize everything so that no one realizes that there's been a hiccup. Yeah.
So a lot of event management, a lot of
Yeah.
like on the spot decisions that you all have to make. Sounds absolutely an industry I could not be part of in a sense. Handling students is enough for me. But I think in terms of thinking about the wedding industry, how we meet and how we get together, I think it's also in a broader scope of thinking a little bit about how couples and marriages are thought of in government and in society as a whole. And I think this is some questions for Yuvan. But we've spoken a little bit about the growing number of single people in Singapore. So I think what you think a little bit about what does family mean for single people, and I think a broader question is we've been talking about it in a sort of businessy sense, but do you think access to relationships might also be an inequality issue?
So I think first we need to acknowledge that the whole relationship or marriage business is an ecosystem. Alex is one player, one type of player within that ecosystem. You can meet organically. There are many different players. Some players focus purely on, for example, building friendships. Some players focus on building skills. I would say even an institution like the university is a very important player in the relationship ecosystem. Because when we look at our data, we observe that, especially for couples who get married below 30, a vast majority of them actually met in school or institutes of higher learning. So these are the opportunities that they have in order to meet organically. I would say interest groups are becoming a lot more popular. Running groups now, talking about coffee raves, no longer clubbing anymore. The whole ecosystem has changed in terms of the kinds of activities that you can do in order to meet couples. But when it comes to marriage and forming of relationships, I think there are two groups that the government is increasingly looking at or concerned. I think one is the overarching theme is about loneliness. So to me, if somebody is trying to date or going onto the platform, actually that's not the challenging person that we need to deal with. The person that is really very challenging, or the archetype that's challenging, is somebody that has totally does not want to involve themselves in the ecosystem, is not interested in participating in relationship or making friends at all. I think getting that person to make that first step is exceptionally challenging. And because now it's so much more easier to form online relationships or to engage with people digitally. But I think data has shown that even those kinds of online relationships cannot compensate for meeting a person face to face or having a real physical, authentic relationship with someone. So that's one group. The second group, and it's an interesting group, is actually empty nesters. For people who have married and the kids have left, now the challenge is what do you do next? And which is why you're starting, or you'll start to see within churches or other religious organizations or organizations that deal with relationships, an additional program where it's meant for empty nesters. In fact, for Families for Life, you're talking about how do we engage grandparents in a way that they would want to participate in the lives of the grandkids, because we're talking about intergenerational challenges, right? The practices of our generation versus the previous generation is very different. Just one example, which I think is very universal, which is, should you feed a baby water or not, is definitely a number one question and debate across the board, no matter what culture, religion that you come from, because it's such a generational divide. So I think we are looking at loneliness as a whole, differing intergenerational perspectives. But to your point, we really don't see that cost is an inhibitor of people meeting friends or relationships. We look at it as saying that, oh, maybe it could be skills, it could be the lack of friends to begin with, or the ability to make those friends. And how do we address that? I think it's the more pressing situation that we need to address.
Right, and I think sort of building up on some of that point you raised, from your experience, whether it's been in the councils, in youth development, business, or relationship services in general, what lessons do you think can help young people, older people, build strong, lasting relationships that lead to committed partnerships?
Yeah, so when we look at the surveys, there's a lot of anxiety. The anxiety builds on many of our Singaporean traditions, time-honored traditions, like as being kiasi, or like, I don't want to lose. Don't win, never mind. I just cannot lose in a relationship. I think that mentality is very hard to manage. And I encourage or implore as friends of other people, please encourage your peers to date or to at least go through a relationship. I mean, in the startup space, many startups fail. If you were to look at the relationship, I think overwhelmingly, they fail. But when you get it right, it's such a meaningful and positive experience. And I think that's what many Singaporeans just can't overcome. Like, what if I break up? You break up. So how do you manage that conversation, right? I think that's where, as communities and as friends, it's very important. Government cannot intervene to that extent in trying to build resilience building for young people. I think that's where the community needs to step up a bit. The second part is in terms of demystifying some of the cost areas as well. My perspective is that cost is actually attached to your own expectations. And we have conversations with my friends. It's like, if to spend on your child, like the sky is the limit. It's really up to you on what you want to do for your kid at any given point of time, right? For us, for example, Carousel is our good friend now, right? Because strollers are just so expensive, but that doesn't mean you need to buy a brand new stroller, right? So when you look at costs, I think we really need to unpack what does cost mean and what's the expectations when raising a child. And I think the third point, going back to the whole concept of friendship, I think we really need to address that. How can we get more Singaporeans to just make friends? I don't want it to be seen like a lost art. I think it'd be very tragic if it becomes such, which is why you're going to see a lot more, or you will see a lot more programs talking about how do you build friends, how do you build conversations. I think maybe Finishing Touch, right, which was back in the day, we had Finishing Touch, should change. It should be like, how do you do a coffee chat with friends? Just bring two random people, put them in a cafe, and then say, nah, strike a conversation. Because those are the skill sets that we are seeing that's missing increasingly with young people. And you may think this is baffling, but I think we need to acknowledge that even for the previous generation, they met so much more organically. That's because there's a lot more openness in people referring their friends, in matchmaking at a very communal level. But because we somehow or other lost that, private sector has come in with solutions. So we shouldn't think and say, oh, why are the Gen Zs or the younger generation so lonesome? Why is that so? There could be some other factors at play, and technology, social media does play an important role in this.
Right, and so I think it's very interesting that you talked about, break up, then break up lah. I always tell my students that I'm not a love guru, but somehow or another, like some people end up in my office talking about their relationships, and then they say break up. Then how? Then I send them some readings to do. Right, read the readings and get better in a sense. No, I mean, I do send them readings because it is important. Know the science, but I think I think what you've pointed out in terms of thinking a little bit more about social connection beyond just relationships. That I think is the starting point of sort of reducing that social isolation we feel. I think one thing that I want if you could elaborate on just a little bit more, when we know that the dating space is very much dominated by the private sector, but is there anything, or should we expect anything from the government to sort of help us in some of our endeavors to connect?
Yeah. So I'm going to frame it from friendship and then relationship side. So on the relationship side, as I mentioned before, I was part of the SDN Council, and I was part of the council that sunset SDN as a whole. And the reason why is because it was very clear that the private sector strengths a lot more nimble, a lot more agile. For those of you who worked in government before, to organize an event, the amount of processes that goes through, we can't be as responsive to the changing needs as private sector could be. So it's a lot more effective on private sector's hands. But that doesn't mean we're not involved. We are very much involved in the skills part of it. How do you get young people to formulate solutions of their own to engage other young people within their schools? I think that's one that we have some hackathons that we are doing at the poly level or at the youth level. Second, we are also experimenting with different kinds of programs. For example, coffee raves, to get young people to mix from a more friendship perspective. We are also trying to see how we can inbuild more skills building in how young people formulate friends. So those are kinds of those direct interventions when it comes to relationship. When it comes to, let's say now you're married, you're in the workforce, we work closely with many of our tripartite partners in how we formulate better family-friendly workplaces. At the corporate level, how do we advocate for family champions within the career space? And of course, for families with kids, we have a lot of whole slew of programs that we do at a communal level to get families to come down. Because I think that's one thing that we would want to have, that parents bring their kids along, there's bouncy castle, we do that very well from a programmatic standpoint. And that's very important because we cannot assume that everybody has access to help. Everybody has access to these opportunities to just bring the kids down, which is why we're very strong in that area and advocating for example, more family-friendly policies as well. So both from a policy perspective and from a programmatic perspective. But if you ask me from a relationship standpoint, I think the private sector is doing a great job. I think private sector is very good in terms of formulating more innovative solutions. Where we will come in is more of the skills and more how we can get young people to formulate friends at a younger age.
Right. And I think in thinking a little bit about how the government can help us, or whether the government should even step in at all, I think it's one way to start thinking about sort of the industry. And I want to get a sensing from, I think, all our panelists today, is that we've talked about the past and the present, but I really like to hear a little bit about what you think is the future of your industry in terms of thinking about the love market moving forward. So maybe we can get Alex to talk a little bit about what you think is the future.
How does it look like?
How does it look like? Yeah.
Well, I think Yuvan mentioned about in real life kind of matching or in real life kind of relationship. I think that is still going to be primary, right? A lot of online dates, no matter how much you swipe, no matter how many matches you have, at the end of the day, you must meet. And when you meet, you will still fail, right? And then you go back to swipe again, right? So that's the reality which in real life is key. And that's what's going to happen for relationships anyway, right? You're going to stay together, be together. So and that's why we do a lot of events also, right? So apart from just swiping, we do news, we do activities. Recently, we started going trips. So we bring a group of people overseas, right, for trips, and we hope to see more relationships being formed through this kind of 3-day, 2-night, 4-day, 3-night kind of activities. Yeah, so I think that's one. I think the other thing it's this AI. I think it's still going to be very critical in the next evolution of this dating industry. The last 10 years has been the mobile space, right? From web-based kind of interaction, use eHarmony. I'm not sure anybody know what is eHarmony. Kind of web-based online dating, to a lot more friendly, kind of swipe-based, mobile-based, that increase the user base by significant amount. It also lowers the barriers to entry to a dating service. A lot of people last time were thinking, I don't want any dating service. Now you talk about, I went on a Tinder date, I went on a Paktor date, I went on a whatever date. Yeah, so that has been a great game changer for the last 10 years. The next part is going to be, I think, a lot more personalization due to AI. I feel that the inputs that we have, whether it's online dating or is it offline dating, the parameters that we get is limited. It's due to self-declaration of information. Feels, oh, my height is da da da. Oh, I like a guy who is income earning 100K and above. These are very static kind of fields, parameters. But I think the future would then be a lot more about you. And this you may not be from your mouth, may not be from your writing. It will be from a representative of you, which might be an AI, right? Into our platforms system, and we will be able to turn better matches for you.
Yeah, very cool.
So I think in terms of my industry, for the wedding industry, it's gonna get smaller. And you know, these days it's so much easier to just get married. You can do a ROM on Zoom. So my friend just got married last month over Zoom.
Yeah, we advocated for that.
So people are not doing your big celebrations, your big wedding banquets, right? Instead, I think the demand comes more from overseas. So locally in Singapore, there are fewer marriages, but people around Asia, you know, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, they are choosing to do their events in Singapore. So we have a lot of these inbound inquiries from overseas clients that are looking to do their events here. Yeah, so that's where our market is going. In terms of the vendor side, I think there will be a lot more differentiation, a lot more interesting offerings coming up. So that's something that I'm very excited about. Our couples are getting a lot more, you know, intentional about how they want their guests to feel at the wedding. We see a lot more customization in terms of their menu or their stationery, right? So that's something different as well. A lot of my couples now want something bespoke. They don't want something like cookie cutter, like everyone has done a wedding here, then I don't want to do it here. Is there any unconventional location that you can suggest to me? You know, yeah. So these are the type. We've done weddings in like a colonial bungalow house. We've done it on rooftops, in restaurants. Restaurant weddings are getting a lot more common these days. Yeah. So that's where we're headed to. Yeah, the hotels are all feeling that pinch. They're not seeing the numbers, you know. So that's a bit scary for them. Yeah, but we are getting a lot of interesting wedding requests these days. Yeah, from locations to the vendors that they want. Yeah.
Anything from the government side, like have more babies?
Look, I'm a volunteer, so but look, no. Ultimately, the reason why I'm involved in this kind of volunteering space is a very fascinating space. Choosing to get married or not choosing to get married is one of the easiest way for you to decide on how do you want to see Singapore in the next 50 years, right? Whether we like it or not, AI or technology can only do so much in terms of caregiving, in terms of the future of the economy. And for us, we always, as volunteers, when we go back and we think about, it's like, how can we create more Singaporeans? That's the fundamental question. Because how you answer the question will determine how society is going to look like, the composition of society, the values and merits. So which is why for many of us, when we've got thousands of volunteers, that's what keeps us going day in, day out. So for what I can encourage maybe to you or to the peers of your peers is, if they're still on the fence of dating or looking into a relationship, tell them, can you at least meet a friend, or can you talk to somebody, or can you start that journey with them? Because as I mentioned, there's only so much government can intervene in terms of finding the last guy over there who wants to formulate a relationship or wants to talk or doesn't even want to talk. I think that's where, as community, we will need to work with one another in getting more people to form friendships, and by doing so, form relationships and meaningful relationships. And then whether or not they're going to have kids, again, that's going to be the generation's choice. But 50 years from then, we will need to understand what are the ramifications of that.
I guess I'll start first from whatever advice I give my students. First, I think the biggest thing is this idea of responsiveness, and the idea that your partner responds in a way that they understand for you, they understand you, they care for you, and they validate you. And to the extent that your partners can do that and can do that well, that typically is a great marker for relationship success and stability in the long run, in a way.
For many of our surveys, okay, firstly, on a positive note, our divorce trends are good.
Yes.
Right? Over people think that, oh, Singapore, there's a lot of high divorce rates. So actually, the answer is no. And I think that goes to show that when people get married, it's really for life. And one key trait that we see in many of our couples is communication is very important. Understanding one another is very important. That doesn't mean, again, social media curation aside, that doesn't mean that everybody has perfect moments. There are all a lot of imperfect moments, but the couples that have very strong support as well from their community or from their peers, I think that is another trait as well. So communication and community, I'll say, are two important traits of a lifelong couple.
Yeah, I agree on that. For me, it's also communication. As I journey with our couples, right, we really spend a lot of time with them. So we see how they solve problems together, like even deciding on, because when it comes to planning a wedding, you're making a lot of decisions, right? What kind of flowers, what colors do you want, what menu, what color should the table linen be? And a lot of these decisions can create a lot of fatigue. Yeah. So when you see couples communicating well, you know that, okay, this is a good sign. They're on the right track. But when you see couples fighting or arguing, then you're like, okay, yeah, this might be a bit hard for them lah. Because the stress does build up when it comes to planning the wedding. Even right down to who sits where, right? Yeah. So I always tell my couples, communicate with each other. If there's something that you're not happy about, why don't we, sit down, talk about it. If this tradition is something that you don't really want to do, maybe you could have a chat with your parents, because sometimes it's not about what you want, it's also what they believe in, right? So these are something that you need to have a conversation with your parents first before coming to me and telling me that I want to scratch this part of the wedding tradition. Yeah. So I always emphasize that to my couples, that sometimes planning a wedding is not just a one-day affair. It's really like coming together of families, right? A lot of interactions and optics of you to your new family that you are joining. Yeah. So that's something for couples to take note of. Yeah.
I think again, Yuvan, I think divorce in Singapore is actually not easy. But divorce in Taiwan is tomorrow's thing. Yeah, I can sign the paper tomorrow and we can get divorced. But in Singapore, it's not so simple, which is a good thing. So I find that, I know back to that question about healthy relationship. I think that feels like a personal response. But I think a commitment is important. That I think this marriage, it's a commitment that you want to hold on dear. And gravitating to it being one, I think being a team, I think this mindset needs to be there, right? And not just you and me, it's just we. Yeah. So I think that's how I see.
Yeah. To add on to that, it's really more about a partnership. A lot of couples see the wedding as an end goal. Once we get married and then that's it, But then the next season of your life starts, right? Moving into your new house, you got more problems to solve, more decisions to make. So sometimes my brides come to me, they're like, oh man, I missed that wedding day. It was so high, we had so much fun, but why is married life so different? Yeah. So I think the way to think about it is really more of a partnership. You have found a lifelong partner that you want to do life with and go through all the ups and downs together, right? It might not be happy, sunshine every day, but it's really how you guys work on problems and really enjoy the good things in life, yeah, together.
I guess just to sort of also say something a little bit about the marital satisfaction trajectory. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but it just goes down from there. You just don't want it to go down very quickly. Right? In a sense, decades of research after research has shown that it peaks there, and then it trends downwards. But that's not to say it's bad in a sense, right? I think it's just normal. I think the second thing is I want to say is that how many of you have heard of love languages? Like all of you have heard of love languages, and what we've seen again in the research is that love languages does not work. It doesn't predict satisfaction, doesn't predict stability. Your match on those languages doesn't matter. So I'm just telling you what the research says.
I thought love languages is like an icebreaker. It's like,
yeah, but
facilitator game, that's
really
it.
believe in it.
No, they're not rivals. BAcc BBM has been around. Even when we started in 2013, 2013, 2014 for offline dating. PUA has been around. I think it's nothing wrong. It's nothing wrong. There are just a few players. I don't think it's that many. There's a guy. Never mind, let's not name him lah. But anyway, yeah. I think he's a bit more prominent. Yeah, I feel that approach to pick up ladies, right? I think if you distill it to the fundamental, it's about confidence. It's about building confidence, and I think that is still key for you to find a life partner, to find a potential match, right? Because a female's first impression, right? If you are not showing some form of presence, right, you will likely not get a second date anyway, right? So I think that the idea is correct, but some of the approach may be a bit aggressive. Yeah, so I think that's how I see it. Still around probably. Not big.
So I'll just pick up very quickly on this question about PUAs. Some research has actually been done here at SMU about pickup artist training. And what we've seen from the research is that people who have gone through some of this very, actually quite easy to follow training, they actually gain social confidence, and people think that they are confident in their interactions, but they don't want to know that you've been trained by a pickup artist. Because once they know that you've been trained by a pickup artist, then they don't find you trustworthy anymore. So get trained, but don't let people know.
Yeah, so on that, I wouldn't even frame it as dating. I'll frame it, what are you interested in? Can you do activities with other people on things that you're interested in? Many times when you see, for example, the concept of CCAs, right? To join dance, and then you have a common interest, you meet somebody and you strike out a conversation. When you're doing that, you're not actually thinking about dating as the end outcome. So I think earlier I mentioned about one archetype where he's somebody that, or he or she is somebody that just lets forces at be, and then if they get married, they get married. There's another archetype which is takes this so seriously that it becomes like a module for themselves. Like, I'm going to go a date every week. I'm guilty of that as well. Like, I'll go to a date every single week, and then by the second date it's out, so on and so forth. If you were to reframe and say, look, what are you interested in? What kind of activities do you like to go? And just go for these activities. If you meet somebody, talk to somebody. If you're able to make it into very simple, intuitive steps, remove the element of dating and just focus on making connection and making interaction. I think that's one thing that we are trying to actively do, which is why there's a lot more interest groups popping up, revamping of how communities are being formed and what they are focusing on, the kinds of activities we are doing. That's the starting line they're doing. We're not telling you form a romantic relationship. We're just trying to tell you meet in activities that you're interested. I think that would be a good starting point.
I think just to add on that, right? I think for a relationship, the first impression to do well is always about being real. Yeah. I think if you make it too structured, I mean, it's not wrong. You're putting the effort. Maybe you really strike something. But going to a more organic environment, right, will make you present yourself as a bit more real, more genuine. And that is a very good factor, right, for initial match.
Very quickly, in some research that my grad student and I are actually running right now, she's sitting right there. We're trialing a self-compassion intervention. So being kinder to yourself might have some buffering effect on dating fatigue, in a sense. So I think, first of all, I think it's good that you're not swinging the other way, in that you're too desperate in a sense. What we again see in the research, I keep just quoting research, but what we see from the research, I think, is that people can actually tell if you are looking too much, in a sense. So I think it's good that you're coming at it from an angle where it's less desperate, in a sense. I think what you want to be is authentic to yourself. I think you want to go in with that sense that you are looking for a friend, but also open to relationships. That kind of tension, I think is useful for people to know. Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. I think from an FFL perspective, we're not telling that every relationship is going to end up in a marriage, or every person that you meet is going to be the one, But the fact that you're meeting people, I think that's the positive part of it, right? ultimately we're trying to look for quality relationships that we want to get into. No point, rushing through things and then it doesn't pan out. This whole concept of, for example, for the younger generation is like, oh, get married to get a BTO. No, that shouldn't be the end outcome, right? But you should just be meeting and interacting. And sometimes when the relationship happens and it leads to the next step, regardless of the age, as long as it's a quality relationship, I think that should be the focus of any connection that you're making.
I think for me, I believe that every foundation of a relationship always starts from friendship, right? So if you can see this person as your friend, you have shared interests, you can click, yeah, then that's a good sign already, right? So even like just now to the earlier question where you asked like, how do you prevent yourself from being exhausted from dating? I think it's about asking the right questions also to the people you meet. Sometimes it's kind of like a job interview, right? Like you are also assessing the other party. So if you have some non-negotiables, like for example, you don't want to date a smoker, you want to date someone who treats his family well, then stick to those non-negotiables, right? And don't compromise on that, right? If you want a GCB, you want a good Christian boy, go for it. Like don't compromise on that. And then that might help you to really funnel down to the right prospects. Yeah. So I think it's good that you're putting yourself out there, right? Like maybe if you do meet someone that have similar interests, you can click that person, then maybe it's about showing some signs that you're interested, right? And not being like, okay, never mind, I'll wait for him to make the first move. Because times are different now. It's 2026. Why do you have to wait for the guy to ask you out for a date, right? You can also initiate a coffee date with the guy that you like, right? To just go on a coffee date and just chit chat, right? Because going for a full meal sometimes can be quite exhausting, quite tiring, quite stressful, right? Like to sit through a full like lunch or dinner, just go out for coffee first and just like have a chit chat, just getting to know someone, like getting to know another person, on a deeper level, just doing something very real, yeah. And then I think it can go from there, right? Just in Chinese we say like 顺其自然, right? Yeah.
I think from a dating company's point of view, I think there's a tip that we always tell our clients. We say that now we are going to set a first date up for you. Your job is to secure a second date. No matter what you do, whether you like the person or don't like the person, your job is to make sure that the person express a keenness to match up with you. I think what that changed is that when you are there, you will behave the best that you can. Maybe you're not that interested, but you still like try to probe, you try to ask, you still look okay, don't dress shabby, right? Yeah, I think that kind of attitude does help you eventually get something in the next, like the second date. I think it doesn't just, my response just now doesn't have to be limited purely to online dating. If respect to the AI component, right? I feel that even for an offline dating company, the fact that there are more parameters to match, more parameters about you, that will help us better be able to find the right person for you. And for offline dating, something interesting is that scale is not as critical as online dating, right? For online dating, you probably need a couple of like tens of thousands to start, right? In order to get something out, right? If not, you'll be getting the same match again and again. You see Alex coming out again and again. Yeah. So, but for offline dating, there's search, right? Which means that I can hunt. I can through outside my database, I can find somebody, right? And I think as long as I know more about you and your preferences and the qualities that you have, the likelihood of finding a right match for you will still apply, even though for an offline kind of situations. The future of dating, again, I think would have a lot more. I think nowadays the players that we see coming out, which are interesting, are things like Never Strangers. I'm not sure if you heard before. Time Left, I think Joanna mentioned before. Yeah, so I think these are offline experiences that people are moving out of dating apps into a more offline, many-to-many meetup situations. Yeah, so I think that will still be a interesting trend, at least a trend for the next few years. Yeah.
So in terms of offline, if you were to look at the entire value chain of relationships, I think there's some shifts that are happening. One is I talk about the rise of organizations catering to friendships. This organization called like Friend Zone, for example, where the entire value proposition, how can I get people to form communities or form conversations with one another? Because there is a gap in that area. The second part I'm seeing is that organizations are being encouraged. And when we talk about organizations, I'm talking about like religious groups, family support groups, not just focusing on the young couples, but as I said, focusing on the older couples or focusing on couples who have gone through divorce or separation as well. Because we need to accept that these are all, this is not failure. This is all realities of being in a relationship. And the moment we start to demonize that as an outcome, I think you're doing a lot of disservice to those couples. So we were starting to see a lot more of initiatives or programs catered to them as well. So it's not just going to be, the young ones have all the focus or all the interest, but we're going through the older couples as well. And to the point, I think the role of being grandparents in the modern day is going to be something that's going to be very important, because really, it really takes a village to raise a child, and having very good relationships with your grandparents is very important. But we also do not assume that everybody has grandparents that are able to support. As we get married later, our parents are even older. What they can do compared to what I saw my grandparents doing is a lot different, which is why I'm seeing a lot more caregiving being done, a lot more of like nanny apps also coming up as well. So we are seeing a lot more different services to help support the entire ecosystem of relationship, of friendship, relationship, and sustaining the marriage. And to the point on whether technology, again, I agree with Alex. I think you can't replace a person interaction. There's only so much of a limitation in terms of robotics and AI can do. I think ultimately we still want to have that face-to-face interaction supplemented by technology, but not replacing human intervention.
Right, and just to sort of like pick up on that point of technology and human relationships, what we see from the current research right now is that it's not bad. It's not good, but it's not like bad in a sense. But all this technology research that we have in terms of like maybe emotional support or venting, it's all very new research, and there's so much that we don't know of, and I think it's going to be a space where we need to do a lot more work moving forward in terms of just understanding these trends. But definitely something to look out for and think about in the future. So I think it's a good point for us where we've heard a lot from the panelists. I think what we've seen is that we're moving from a place where we've thought about love as very accidental, and now it's so much more intentional. And I think it leaves us with more thought about whether this love, is it going to be more fragile? Is it going to be more durable moving forward? But I think what's definitely going to be the case is, and hopefully going to be the case, is that this love industry will keep thriving. Like hopefully we don't have many more single people in a sense. But I think we've had a lovely time with our panelists today. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you very much for the insightful thoughts that we've all had.